Have you ever contemplated a flood not made of water, but of beer? Imagine, if you can, the bustling heart of London in the early 19th century. At the center of this hubbub, the Meux and Company Brewery, a titan of industry, was tirelessly working to quench the city's insatiable thirst for beer. Day in and day out, the brewery was a whirlwind of activity, with brewers diligently monitoring the fermentation process and the clatter of horse-drawn wagons delivering barrels to countless pubs echoing through the streets. But on October 17, 1814, this routine was shattered in the most unthinkable way. Picture this: a vat, a colossal wooden structure, filled to the brim with over 1 million pints of fermenting porter. On that fateful day, this mammoth vat ruptured. The force of this rupture was akin to an explosion, the sound reverberating through the brewery and out into the streets of London. In an instant, the brewery was transformed into a scene of chaos. Workers scrambled to safety as a tidal wave of beer crashed through the building, carrying everything in its path. The smell of beer filled the air, a bizarre contrast to the panic unfolding. The initial shock of the explosion left onlookers stunned and disoriented. Imagine standing there, witnessing a wave of beer, a torrent so out of place in the urban landscape, surging towards you. The flood of beer was as deadly as it was surreal. The force of the liquid was unstoppable, and the brewery, once a bastion of industry, was powerless against the surge. The wave of beer swept out of the brewery, cascading into the streets, and bringing with it a wave of confusion and terror. But this was just the initial shock. The real disaster was yet to unfold. As the wave of beer receded, the full scale of the damage began to become apparent. But that, dear listeners, is a tale for another moment. For now, let us take a pause and reflect on the strange and tragic event that was the London beer flood. As if a vat bursting wasn't already catastrophic enough, the worst was yet to come. What ensued can only be described as a domino effect of epic proportions. The initial rupture acted as a trigger, setting off a chain reaction that would lead to even more disaster. Imagine a scene of towering vats, filled to the brim with beer. The initial rupture had caused the contents of the first vat to surge out, with a force that was nothing short of gargantuan. This torrent of beer lashed against the other vats in the brewery which, under the immense pressure, gave way one after another. The result was a colossal wave of beer, a tidal wave that was as stunning in its enormity as it was terrifying in its pace. This was no slow-moving river of beer, but a rapid, unstoppable force. Picture the speed of a galloping horse or a train hurtling down the tracks. That's how fast we're talking. The brewery workers, who moments ago were going about their daily tasks unaware of the impending doom, were caught off guard. Their disbelief quickly turned into sheer terror as they found themselves in the path of the beer tsunami. The same can be said for the nearby residents, whose peaceful evening was about to turn into a nightmare. The brewery, once filled with the sound of clanking bottles and the aroma of fermenting malt, was now echoing with the roar of the wave and the screams of the workers. The ground shook as if an earthquake had hit, but it wasn't the earth moving. It was beer, a vast amount of it, rushing through the brewery like a wild beast let loose. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? A flood of beer, something that might sound amusing in a pub tale, was, in reality, a catastrophe of historic proportions. And this was just the beginning. The beer had broken its bonds, and nothing within the brewery could hold it back. And then, the wave of beer hit the streets. Imagine the streets of London now turned into rivers of beer. What was once a bustling cityscape was suddenly transformed into a scene of watery chaos and destruction. The beer flood had left its mark, and it was one of devastation. 2 homes and a local pub, places once filled with laughter and life, were completely obliterated. The rubble was a stark reminder of the power of this unexpected disaster, but the loss of bricks and mortar was nothing compared to the human toll. 8 lives were snuffed out in the blink of an eye, swept away by a tidal wave of beer. Among them were mothers, fathers, children, everyday Londoners whose lives were cut short in the most unexpected of ways. In the face of this disaster, the local community and city officials sprang into action. Rescue efforts were launched, with people working tirelessly to search for survivors among the wreckage. The devastation was immense, but the spirit of Londoners was unbroken. Amidst the ruins, there was a sense of unity, a shared resolve to rebuild and recover. The news of the beer flood spread quickly, and public reaction was a mix of shock, disbelief, and outrage. How could such a tragedy have occurred in the heart of London? What could have been done to prevent it? The city was grappling with these questions, trying to make sense of the senseless. City officials too were left grappling with the aftermath. They faced the challenging task of investigating the incident, identifying the causes, and ensuring that such a catastrophe would never happen again. The brewery was scrutinized, safety standards were reviewed, and policies were put in place to prevent a similar disaster in the future. The beer flood was a tragedy, but it also served as a wake-up call. It highlighted the importance of safety measures and regulations, of making sure that every step is taken to protect the lives and homes of the city's residents. In the aftermath of the beer flood, questions were raised about how such a tragedy could have happened. But from these questions arose a renewed commitment to safety, to learning from the past and ensuring a safer future. So, what was the fallout from this bizarre incident? Well, the calamity of the London beer flood led to an inquiry that concluded the accident was, of all things, an act of God. This was a common legal term in the 19th century, used to describe events outside of human control, ones that no one could be held responsible for. The repercussions of this strange event weren't confined to legalities, though. It also ushered in a wave of changes within the brewing industry. Measures were implemented to ensure such an incident would never recur. This involved structural modifications to vats and stringent safety protocols, forever changing the way breweries operated. It was a hard lesson learned, but one that undoubtedly saved lives in the future. The London beer flood, a strange and tragic event, left an indelible mark on the city's history, reminding us that even in the most unexpected situations, disaster can strike.